Hello, my name is Sylvain Rochon, and this is still my effort to, um, in writing my book. So this is the final chapter, in fact, for the section on the ministry, so the executive branch of the government that takes care of the people and systems with as much automation as possible, because in the ideal future, people are not working for a living. So we want to minimize the amount of people actually involved in government and also the resources expended in governance. But it's pretty important to have certain aspects involved in governance, especially if we want to have unbiased treatment of citizens. So this video is about the Ministry of Economy and Trade, a fairly big part, because economy in a sense is often misunderstood in modern times. I believe we are mostly focused around money when we think about economy, but really economy is about resources. So you have the human resources, so the human capital, the people, and their consumption of resources and their production of value. Right, so that's part of it. But also there's the material resources, or the natural resources, for example, that need to be consumed, the energy consumed and production. So we have to think about it, especially in the ideal future. We have to think about the economy for two facets. There's the material parts, so the input and the output of physical resources. And then there is the other resource, which is the human effort. So the humans will consume, but also they will generate value in society. And the value in society is not necessarily limited to production of products and services. And services in a trade kind of point of view. A value in society can also be things like a parenthood, which I often use as an example because it's underrated in the economy. Like this, it's extremely hard to calculate. How do you measure the value of a parent raising a child? We know it is highly valuable because there's a new human being. It's raised over 15 to 20 years. There's a lot of expenditures being made by multiple aspects of society, but in particular sacrificed by parents. And they spend a lot of time, the parents themselves spend a lot of time raising this person. And then this individual has hopefully a positive impact on society. So it produces value more than it consumes it, right? But it was brought into adulthood by parents. So that there's a lot of value in that. And so in the ideal world, you want to reward or compensate in some way that added social value of being a parent. And it's not only about parenthood. There's lots of stuff that people do, just helping friends and family, neighbors. A lot of volunteer work is added value socially, but is not compensated with money. In the ideal world, what we want to do, we want to have a system where there's actually an accurate compensation of money for people that add value to society. And the reason for that is very simple. It's if it is considered value to society, then there's a number that can be attached to it. The issue we're having today is that it's hard to calculate, and all value calculation is actually done by other human beings, and human beings can't see what parents do. I mean, it's too complex. It's hard to do. With an advanced AI and lots of sensors around, like we were talking about in multiple chapters, then we can actually see and measure using AI. AI can do very complex calculations and assumptions. We can measure the value of all these things that people do, including parenting and government, because the value is calculated. Then you can compensate in a certain way using money these people that are actually providing value. Because if there's a value of, let's say, 1,000 units, right, of social value that is spread across a nation because of raising a child or some other, or volunteering for certain things and whatnot, well, then the person that provides the value can receive a compensation that is equal to that. 1,000 units, for example, or a little bit less, but at least something. right? And AI can determine that without human intervention. And that way it's actually beneficial, and families and individuals that don't, that just does it. Again, we have to think about this society is not working for a living, but it does have basic needs that are covered by, like we discussed before, by a basic income that comes from money from the government. And so at least you have your basic needs met. That is the role of the government in this society. But then if you add value by doing certain things, not slouching, like being on your sofa and just not doing anything, then the AI can calculate what is the social value of what you're generating as part of your actions, and then you can have additional compensation for that. Okay, and that money can be then reused to buy things, and part of that money will also be taxed to go to the government to sustain the government itself, you know, healthcare, the education, the basic income, and all these things. Okay, so you're creating a cash flow that is not based on employment and and things that we think about traditionally. We can base an economy on the value generated and the actual value of the resources when it pertains to how we can transform them to things that we believe are as value. So it's because value is all about the perception of what is valuable to us. So helping another person that has a certain value, it can be measured. That's value. Transforming natural resources into products that we can use, we associate value to it automatically in an offer and demand kind of way, which is still a good way to do it in the future. And we pay a certain amount of value equivalency in units or in money to get that. So we can create an economy that with money that facilitates exchanges and allows people to exchange value. Like I said, for parenthood, the government calculates that this has a certain value in society, compensates for that, then that money can be spent into to another way. And if it's spent through taxes, that is something that goes to the government and is then pushed back in social value in social systems and what so on and so forth. So you can have cash flow and power to the individuals, but all based on of what we measure as far as social value, things that contribute to either individual perceived value or social collective perceived value that we can all agree that is absolutely valuable. And AI can facilitate all that, can measure that. Now, it also needs to be, I mean, the economy itself, like the actual money, which is all digital at that point, needs to be also maintained in balance, because you can't just willy-nilly give money around. You have to have like some kind of ledger that keeps things in check. And we want to have algorithms, whether it's AI or some other type of algorithms that is independent from the governing the people in governance to manage all that. So I'm recommending something like cryptocurrency, a decentralized monetary system that has rules and algorithms that calculate and measure, like I was telling you about, and compensates and generates new digital currency as the algorithms dictate. So it's not about the person deciding, well, there's too much inflation, there's not enough, we need more loans or anything like that, like our current system with fiat currency. No, it's an algorithm that just works so that the cash flow keeps dynamically being functional and keeps the economy growing in the right direction. It's completely decentralized, and even the Ministry of Economy and Trade cannot influence influx or outflux of money inside the system. The algorithms do. In that way, it's fair, it's transparent. Nobody's in control of it, no banking, nothing. And that allows, those algorithms are designed, because you need to prepare that, designed to keep the value, the human value, and keep people in the trade, keeping people with sufficient amounts to get their basic needs met. The government and the government systems with enough funds to do what they need to do, and the people enough to do what they need to do, and they get value back, and so on. So we can create this whole system that is balanced. And I will elaborate what I think that system is going to look like in detail with numbers in the last section of the book, well, actually the third section of the book, which is the economy and people, for the people. So I'll describe that in the next section in great detail. However, all you need to know for now is that we can make it through a cryptocurrency kind of way, which means it's something that is immutable, decentralized, can't be edited, can't be cheated, and extremely transparent. It's all automated, so that everybody's, again, government is supposed to be doing something unbiased. So the Ministry of Economy and Trade can be the creator of this system, supervising it, but it can't actually control it. Now, one important part of this whole system is that of value, so that the value of things don't go all out of whack, like, because we are dealing with offer and demand, is that this system, I believe, needs to have some kind of standard. I don't believe things like gold or anything based on scarcity would work, because in our future with light AI, everything is basically abundant. So what we want to have a basic comparative amount that is in fact absolutely needed for humanity 100% of the time, but that is also abundant. So we can just compare, we can assign like the unit of the monetary unit to be one unit is equal to a liter of distilled water. For example, we are 85% water ourselves. We constantly need water. We'll always need water, and the planet Earth is filled with water. It's almost all water, and so it's something that we always will need and want, and it's abundant. So if everything of value is compared to that one unit is equal 1 liter of water, for example, then values will tend to be constantly compared, and because it's on the blockchain or some other kind of cryptocurrency algorithms, then this is absolutely always respected. So it's always compared to that inside the system. And then people can always trade where, a house in Manhattan, like I wrote, is the same house won't have the same value as the same house in the country somewhere in Alberta, Canada, because the perception of value fluctuates based on offer and demand. In Manhattan, there's a higher demand than somewhere in the country in Alberta. So relatively to the water, it wouldn't change. The value of water likely will not change a whole lot. So you'd have fluctuations in the markets currently for offer and demand, but not so much for there's no chance of inflation or deflation to be a problem in this case, at least if the algorithms are done properly. And this is all about coding and engineering. So that's one specific, like the general aspects of what the Ministry of Economy would manage, and it would supervise and prepare this whole system and kind of keep an eye on it, and also facilitate regulations around these things. Now, there's two other things that are fairly specific I want to discuss. One is land ownership. In the ideal future, I don't believe we want to have anybody own the land. In fact, the whole nation and the people of the nation would own all the land collectively, very similar to what the Aboriginals in North America and Australia believe. So it's not a new idea, but it's something that used to work for the Aboriginals here. It's the Europeans actually brought the idea of land ownership because of kingdoms and fiefs and serving the king, and you working my land, and all this possessivity around land ownership. In reality, if you just think about it in a scientific point of view, land is not an enclosed thing. I mean, animals, plants, atoms, wind, air, water, everything kind of moves over, and land is constantly changing and exchanging with everything around it. You can't do something on one piece of land without affecting everything around it and all over the globe, if you think about it. Like, you know, the accident in Fukushima, I think it was 2013, I'm not sure anymore, in Fukushima, the big nuclear explosion there, it happened at a specific plant, but the radiation actually impacted the whole planet within 7 days. I mean, land, any land actually affects everybody. And you know, one of the big issues that we're seeing today with the 1% and 99% is that you have a small amount of people owning the land, and if you're on the land, then they get some compensation for you using their land, which is in fact affecting everybody and everybody else's land. It just doesn't make logical sense that we should continue working this way and still have a balanced society and a positive one. We have to shy away from that. What I think we should do is that we should have governance, so in this case the Ministry of Economy and Trade, supervise the leasing of the people's lands. Now I'm talking about only about supervision, because it could, you know, we could use, you know, blockchain and different technologies to actually manage on a technical level the you know, who leases the land and how, so that there's no preferential treatment. But in a nutshell, what I'm seeing here is is if you need a piece of land to do something, then you can trade for it. You can trade for it with either a private company that is enabled by the ministry or the ministry itself, but under certain terms. So you're leasing it, you don't own it. And you lease it, but under certain conditions, because this is the land of the people, entire people. So, for example, if I want, because I want to build a business, and I need a certain space, I need to use this land for a certain thing, right? Like, let's use mining for an example. Then these are the terms of why I'm leasing the land. It is for that, and it would be approved for that particular purpose, under some criteria, because the people, what they want the land to be used for, well, they want it to be productive, they want it to be healthy, ecologically friendly, you can't junk it, it needs to provide value to society that everybody can enjoy, not only you, because again, it's the people's lands, it's not a private ownership, it's the people's land. So all these terms would be to benefit the nation, to benefit all the people. And you said, so you lease the land to build to mine under the terms that are stated in there. That's fine. And so if you follow the rules, then you can build your mine and do your production, and the people will be happy. And again, you remember, there's this online system where everything's transparent. So every piece of land, it's all transparent. Everybody can check who's leasing which piece of land and for what, under which terms. You can actually explore that and keep an eye on it yourself. And the ministry is doing that as experts as well. And if this mining company decides to repurpose the land for something else, does something that is not according to the terms of their lease, they can lose the lease, because that's the people's lands. You're doing business there because you're trying to be responsible for everybody, for the people. So that can limit a lot of abuse, and the people can always take that land back if you're not satisfying the terms appropriately. And of course, I mean, there's always legal recourse if the owner of the company doesn't agree with the complaints from the people or from the ministry, right? So that you get again more participation from the people and how the land is actually used. And collectively, we can guide how the world, or how the nation is actually used, and how the resources are exploited in a proper way, in a way that the nation's people actually agree to. Of course, that limits some exploitation, but in a good way. We have minimal abuse. So that's one part that I think is very important. The second part is abolishing some types of trading. or some types of investment. Right now, like my big beef is with the stock market at banks. It's more about the stock market, because banks will be banks. They'll try to be business and abuse as much as the law allows, for sure. But inside the stock market is a specific way that people that start off being a private company that have investors usually buy shares. It's corporation, and then after a while they do what an initial an IPO, an initial public offering. There you go. I couldn't remember. To get the shares from the private investors bought by the public. So, and the exchanges that are used are stock markets. So the initial investors, that's one of their ways to get their money back from their risking their money into that business. Fair enough. The investors need to be able to invest. That's a source of innovation, no problem. And getting the public to invest and to buy those shares out is also healthy and not a big issue. The issue is within the stock market, and I don't go into details. I do make references inside the documentation. If you can check the blog, you can get the references. But that inside the current stock market systems, there's a lot of abuse and charges that are being charged. And because you have big firms that are controlling the markets and controlling how the automated systems and fast trades and shorting, all this actually work. And banks and other companies have managed to kind of infiltrate different ways to abuse and get some money and skim some money off all these transactions. Ultimately, is the investors, the public investors, that are actually paying for all these things. But these companies are not adding value. They're kind of cheating the transaction. You don't need to do trades the way that are being done now. Right now it's extremely convoluted, extremely complex. Most people, even the experts, don't know about all the little methods to cheat the system and to make a little bit of money off of each trade there is. But they're there because it's an old system and it's been layered, and people are kind of abusingly and greedily trying to cheat their way into making some extra money off of it. It's obscure, it's not transparent, it's terrible. So I would recommend to actually just dump all the stock markets that are traditional in favor of different ways to invest. Because, like I said before, it's totally fine to invest the way that it should be done. Like I described, private investors want an out, public investing in, no problem. Right now, there's a lot of alternatives. We can think. I love the idea of Kickstarter. I know it's kind of old, but you have a lot of other platforms. You're buying into an idea, and you want a service or a product, and that's your risk. You're not sure you're going to get it, but you're buying into something of value, as that's an alternative way of investing. You're not getting money back. You're getting something that you want back that doesn't exist yet, but you're investing into the idea, into the company, to actually get that product out. Awesome. You have other systems like Patreon, which is another really nice one. This is more for artists. Artists produce, but they need also to live. So you can invest into an artist, a writer, a painter, an activist, invest in what they do, and in return you can get them to produce, and you enjoy what they produce. So you get something tangible back out of it. That's awesome. Also, like, to replace the traditional stock markets with all its loopholes and cheats, there are cryptocurrency, SEC approved, the first SEC approved cryptocurrency exchanges that have made an appearance, I believe, like earlier this year, or maybe end of 2017, called T0. That's one of them. There's going to be more. That allows the exchange of securities on the blockchain. And the blockchain, like I mentioned before, is very transparent. Some of them are decentralized and not controlled by anybody. Like Bitcoin is not, is centralized and not controlled by an entity, and allows people to do investment exchanges like they would do in a traditional stock market. But because of it's on the blockchain, which is a big ledger that can't be tampered with. the initial ones, at the very least, don't have all these little loopholes, and it would be extremely hard to actually integrate new loopholes into these new exchanges. But they are clean and pure to start with. They have a small transaction fee when you actually do it, because it's an actual company that built it. The T0 is a company name, just like any other exchange. There's a service fee, but it's very small, and there's not all this additional skimming that happens in the traditional stock exchanges that are hyper abusive, and that's money out of the investors' pockets. So there's new stock market ideas that are based on more secure, more transparent methods that are coming out that still allow investors to feed into innovation, into different ideas in the very same way as a traditional type of stock market. So we can just do things in a better way, and we can reduce to ash the traditional stock markets, because I don't believe they'll be reformable. It's too complex. I think we just need to, in parallel, encourage and invest in the new ones, and let the old systems that are abusive and costly and cheaty die on their own. So I'm encouraging everybody to actually check out all these alternative ways to invest money in exchange for value, and have a good time exploring them, encouraging them. Take a risk in investing in them or through them, and I think we'll all be better off in the future, because if you don't use it, then it's a losing proposition. And so good business ideas are generally eventually get used profusely, and if they're better than the traditional ones, then they replace the traditional means. And that's what may happen with the stock market on its own. So you don't necessarily need to abolish. Maybe they're just going to die off because there's just better ways to do things. And that's about you and I using what's better. And then we make the world a better place through voting with our dollars and with our voice and with our actions. Anyway, that's it for now. Next week, or not next week, well, yes, next week, I believe I will start writing and talking about this whole section about the specifics of how to run this brave new world economy based on value and based on basic needs of the humans. So if you're interested, I'm going to meet you then, and in the meantime, enjoy the very nice summer that's announcing. Bye-bye.